The massive space station Nexus Prime floated silently in the darkness between stars. Inside its gleaming halls, the most powerful beings in the galaxy had gathered for their yearly meeting. This was where the 12 great species of the Galactic Coalition came to show off their weapons and brag about their armies. Admiral Vextar stood tall on his 6 legs, his green scales catching the light as he spoke. He was from the Zephyrian Empire, and his people were known for being fierce warriors. Behind him, a giant screen showed bright flashes of energy as his ships fired their plasma cannons. The weapons could melt through metal like butter. "Behold our newest plasma arrays," Vextar announced, his voice deep and proud. "Each blast contains the power of a small star. No enemy can stand against such might." The other aliens nodded and made impressed sounds. Some had tentacles that waved in approval. Others had crystal bodies that glowed brighter when they were excited. Commander Thale stepped forward next. Her body looked like it was made of living diamond, and when she moved, rainbow colors danced across her surface. She was from the crystalline Dominion, and her people had learned to bend energy itself to their will. "Our shield technology has reached new heights," Thale said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Watch as our defenses turn enemy fire into harmless light." The demonstration showed invisible barriers around her ships. When weapons hit them, the deadly energy simply vanished like morning mist. One by one, the other species took their turns. The spider-like arachnoids showed off their web ships that could trap entire fleets. The gas beings from Nebula 7 demonstrated how they could turn their bodies into living weapons. Each group tried to outdo the others with more impressive displays. In a quiet corner of the Great Hall, Captain James Parker sat alone at a small table. He was human, and compared to the towering aliens around him, he looked very ordinary. Parker was in his 50s with gray hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform without fancy decorations or glowing parts. The other species barely noticed him. Humans were new to galactic politics, having only joined the coalition 5 years ago. Their technology seemed primitive compared to the wonders on display. While alien ships looked like works of art with flowing curves and glowing engines, human ships looked like metal boxes with simple rocket thrusters. Parker watched everything carefully, making notes on a basic tablet computer. When Admiral Vextar showed his plasma cannons, Parker recorded the energy output and firing rate. When Commander Thale demonstrated her shields, he noted the frequency patterns and power requirements. The other aliens sometimes glanced at him with amusement. A few whispered among themselves, and their translators picked up words like primitive and backward. Parker heard them but showed no emotion. He just kept watching and writing. Finally, the meeting moderator called his name. The moderator was a tall, thin being with 4 arms and purple skin. "Captain Parker of the Terran Federation, please present your military capabilities." Parker stood up slowly and walked to the center of the hall. All the alien eyes turned to him. Some looked curious, but most seemed bored. He activated a simple holographic projector, much less advanced than the flashy displays the others had used. The image showed human ships moving through space, but they weren't fighting. Instead, they were rescuing people from damaged stations and helping evacuate planets before natural disasters struck. One scene showed human crews working day and night to save trapped miners on an asteroid. Another showed doctors treating injured aliens from a dozen different species. "The Terran Federation believes our greatest strength is protecting life," Parker said in a quiet, steady voice. "Our ships are designed first for rescue and aid operations. We prefer defensive strategies that preserve rather than destroy." The hall fell silent for a moment. Then Admiral Vextar made a sound that his translator turned into laughter. "How charmingly innocent," he said. "Perhaps humans will understand warfare better after observing true military power in action." Commander Thale's crystal body flickered with patterns that clearly showed amusement. "Such peaceful intentions are admirable for a young species," she said in a tone that sounded kind but felt condescending. "In time, you will learn that the galaxy requires strength to maintain order." Other aliens nodded in agreement. The spider beings clicked their approval. The gas creatures swirled in patterns that meant the same thing. They all thought humans were weak and naive. Parker turned off his projector and returned to his seat without arguing or defending his presentation. He simply went back to his note-taking as if nothing had happened. As the meeting wound down, each species made grand exits. The Zephyrian ships performed complex flight patterns that left trails of colored light. The crystalline vessels sang haunting melodies as they departed. The others showed off in their own ways, each trying to leave the most impressive final image. The single human transport ship left quietly without any fancy displays. It looked plain and unremarkable next to all the exotic alien technology. Most of the coalition leaders had already forgotten about Captain Parker and his peaceful presentation. But if they had looked more carefully, they might have noticed Parker's final action before leaving the station. He connected his tablet to the human ship's main computer and uploaded terabytes of data. Information about weapons, shields, ship designs, tactical formations, and communication systems. Everything he had observed and recorded during the long meeting. The quiet human had been learning all along, storing away every detail for future reference. While the other species focused on impressing each other, Parker had been studying them all with the patience of a hunter watching prey. The observer had been observing, and soon the galaxy would learn what humans could do with all that carefully gathered knowledge. 3 months had passed since the Grand Military Summit, and the galaxy was no longer peaceful. Warning sirens echoed through coalition command centers as urgent messages flooded in from the outer systems. The hegemony of Scarth had launched surprise attacks on 3 neutral worlds, seizing control of the vital trade routes that kept the coalition's economy running. The Scarth were a brutal warrior race known for their aggression and cunning. Their ships were black and angular, covered in spikes and weapon ports. They had been quiet for decades, building their strength in secret while the coalition grew comfortable with peace. Admiral Vextar paced back and forth in the emergency war room, his green scales clicking against the metal floor with each step. Around the circular table sat representatives from all 12 coalition species, their faces showing worry and anger. The situation is clear, Vextar declared, slamming his clawed fist on the table. The Scarth have made their move. They think we have grown soft during our years of peace. It is time to show them the true power of Zephyrian plasma technology. His reptilian eyes gleamed with excitement. This was what his people lived for, the chance to prove their superiority in battle. Give me command of a strike force. I will burn their ships from space before they can blink. The other coalition leaders nodded in agreement. Commander Thale's crystal body pulsed with approval. The crystalline Dominion will provide shield support. Our defensive arrays will protect the fleet while Zephyrian weapons do their work. One by one, the other species volunteered their most advanced warships. The spider beings offered their web ships that could trap enemy vessels. The gas creatures promised to use their shape-changing abilities for reconnaissance. Soon, an impressive armada was taking shape on paper. Captain Parker sat quietly in his corner chair, watching the planning unfold. He had been invited to these meetings as a courtesy, since humans were technically coalition members. But nobody expected much from Earth's small and primitive fleet. After an hour of excited military planning, Parker finally raised his hand. "If I may," he said in his calm voice, "the Terran Federation would like to contribute our 3rd fleet to this operation." The room fell silent. Admiral Vextar looked at the human with what might have been pity. "Captain Parker, I appreciate the gesture, but this will be a real military engagement. Your rescue ships are not designed for combat." "We understand our limitations," Parker replied evenly. "But we would like to help in whatever way possible. Perhaps a supporting role?" Commander Thale's crystal features flickered with amusement. "Of course. Human vessels could assist with supply runs and medical evacuations. Consider this an educational opportunity to observe proper military tactics." Several aliens made sounds that their translators turned into polite laughter. The idea of humans participating in a real battle seemed almost comical to them. "Very well," Vextar said with exaggerated patience. "Human ships may provide rearguard support. Stay well back from the actual fighting and try not to get in our way." Parker nodded acceptance without showing any emotion. "Understood, Admiral. We will do our best to stay out of your way." As the meeting broke up, the alien representatives chatted excitedly about the coming battle. This would be their chance to test new weapons and tactics against a real enemy. The Scarth had picked the wrong time to challenge the coalition. Parker left the meeting and returned to his small quarters on the station. He activated his secure communication system and sent coded messages to Earth's 3rd Fleet. 12 Lunar-class vessels would rendezvous at the staging area within 48 hours. To any alien observer, the Lunar-class ships looked unremarkable. They were boxy and functional, with plain gray hulls and simple engine designs. They had no elegant curves or glowing energy fields like coalition vessels. They looked exactly like what they were supposed to be, basic patrol ships designed for peaceful missions. But appearances could be deceiving. 2 days later, the coalition armada assembled at the edge of Scarth space. 87 warships from 12 different species formed an impressive sight. The Zephyrian vessels gleamed like green jewels, their plasma cannons already charging with deadly energy. The crystalline ships sang in harmonious frequencies that made space itself seem to vibrate. The 12 human ships took their assigned position at the back of the formation, far from the expected action. They looked tiny and insignificant compared to the alien dreadnoughts surrounding them. Parker established his command aboard the vessel Determination, one of the newer Lunar-class ships. His crew worked quietly and efficiently, running what appeared to be routine system checks. Lieutenant Emma Walsh, his tactical officer, studied the alien ships around them with intense interest. "Captain," she said quietly, "their communication protocols are exactly as you predicted from the summit recordings." "Good," Parker replied, watching the alien formations on his main screen. "Continue monitoring all coalition frequencies. I want a complete analysis of their command structure and battle doctrines." What the coalition commanders didn't know was that Parker's primitive ships were equipped with some of the most advanced sensor arrays humans had ever built. Hidden beneath their plain exteriors were quantum processors capable of analyzing thousands of variables simultaneously. While Admiral Vextar prepared his plasma cannons and Commander Thale tuned her shield harmonics, the humans were doing something far more dangerous. They were learning everything about their allies' capabilities, communication systems, and tactical preferences. Parker had spent 3 months studying the data from the military summit. Now he would get to see how those theoretical capabilities performed in actual combat. Every weapon signature, every shield frequency, every command protocol was being recorded and analyzed by his ship's computers. The coalition fleet began moving toward Scarth territory, confident in their overwhelming superiority. None of the alien commanders paid any attention to the modest human ships trailing behind them. They were about to learn that underestimating the quiet observers had been a terrible mistake. The coalition fleet moved through space like a parade of deadly stars. 87 warships from 12 different species flew in perfect formation toward the Kepler Nebula, where intelligence reports said the Scarth forces were waiting. Admiral Vextar's flagship, the Stellar Fury, led the advance with its plasma cannons glowing bright green in the darkness. Captain Parker watched from the bridge of the Determination as the alien ships spread out into their attack formation. The human vessels stayed far behind, exactly where they had been ordered to remain. To anyone watching, they looked like nervous newcomers trying to stay out of harm's way. Lieutenant Emma Walsh sat at her tactical station, her fingers dancing across controls that looked simple but hid incredible complexity. Her screens showed data streams that would have amazed the coalition commanders, if they had bothered to look. "Captain," Walsh whispered, keeping her voice low, "I'm detecting standard Scarth energy signatures ahead. But something feels wrong about their positioning." Parker leaned forward in his command chair. "Explain." "The spacing between their ships is too perfect. Too regular. Real combat formations have variations based on individual ship capabilities and commander preferences. This looks more like..." She didn't need to finish. Parker understood immediately. A trap. The coalition fleet continued forward, confident and eager for battle. Long-range scanners showed exactly what they expected to see, a modest Scarth force of maybe 30 ships clustered near the center of the nebula. It looked like the enemy had been caught by surprise and was trying to form a defensive position. Admiral Vextar's voice boomed across the communication channels. "All ships, prepare for engagement. This will be over quickly. The Scarth have nowhere to run." Commander Thale's crystalline voice chimed in with musical tones. "Shield harmonics are synchronized. Coalition vessels are protected and ready for combat." Parker said nothing. His ships maintained their position at the rear of the formation while their hidden sensors worked overtime. The nebula's dense gas clouds made scanning difficult, but human technology had ways around such problems. The coalition fleet entered the nebula's outer edge, their weapons charging and shields glowing bright. The alien commanders were already planning victory celebrations, discussing how to divide up the captured Scarth territory. Then space exploded into chaos. Scarth ships appeared from everywhere at once, not 30 vessels, but over 300. They emerged from hiding places deep within the gas clouds, where they had been waiting in perfect silence. The modest force the coalition had detected was just bait in a carefully planned ambush. The enemy ships were sleek and black, covered in angular armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons fired streams of dark energy that cut through space like deadly lightning. But the most shocking thing was how many of them there were. Admiral Vextar's confident voice turned to panic. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. We're surrounded." But it was too late. The Scarth had planned this trap for months, maybe years. They knew exactly how coalition forces like to fight, and they had prepared counters for every tactic. The first plasma blasts from Zephyrian ships struck Scarth vessels and simply vanished. The enemy armor was adaptive, changing its structure to absorb and deflect different types of energy. Weapons that should have melted through metal like paper barely left scorch marks. Commander Thale's shield harmonics, which had seemed so impressive during the demonstration, collapsed within minutes. The Scarth had studied Coalition technology too, and their weapons were specifically designed to disrupt crystalline defensive frequencies. One by one, Coalition ships began to explode in brilliant flashes of light. The Spider Being's web ships were torn apart by focused fire. The gas creatures found their shape-changing abilities useless against enemies who could track them through the nebula's interference. Worse still, the Scarth were jamming all Coalition communications. Ships that had worked together for years suddenly couldn't talk to each other. The careful formations fell apart as individual vessels fought desperate battles alone. Admiral Vextar watched in horror as half his fleet disappeared in the first 10 minutes of fighting. His own ship shook as Scarth weapons hammered against failing shields. Retreat. All ships, retreat to Rally Point 7. But there was nowhere to run. The Scarth had positioned their ambush perfectly. Every escape route was blocked by enemy vessels. The Coalition fleet was trapped in a killing field with no way out. Parker remained calm as explosions lit up space around them. The human ships had stayed far enough back to avoid the initial ambush, but they were still in terrible danger. Walsh's sensors showed the true scope of the disaster unfolding ahead of them. "Captain," she reported quietly, "Coalition casualties are at 60% and rising. The Scarth have adapted to every Coalition weapon system. Our allies are being systematically destroyed." In desperation, Admiral Vextar opened an emergency channel that somehow reached through the jamming. His voice was broken and defeated. "Captain Parker, if your ships can assist with evacuation, we need to save who we can." Parker studied the tactical display one more time before responding. The Scarth ambush was brilliant, but it had one fatal flaw. In their eagerness to trap the Coalition fleet, they had revealed everything about their own capabilities. For 37 minutes, Parker's hidden sensors had been recording every Scarth weapon signature, every movement pattern, every tactical decision. The human computers had been analyzing and processing data while the battle raged. "Admiral," Parker replied in his steady voice, "we've been analyzing Scarth tactical patterns since the engagement began. We may have identified a solution, but it requires precise coordination. Are you prepared to accept human tactical guidance?" The communication channel fell silent except for the sound of distant explosions. Then Vextar's voice came back, stripped of all pride and arrogance. "Yes. God help us, yes. What do you need us to do?" The quiet humans were about to stop being quiet. The Coalition fleet was dying. Brilliant explosions lit up the nebula as another Zephyrian cruiser broke apart under Scarth fire. Admiral Vextar watched his proud armada crumble, his green scales pale with shock. In 30 years of warfare, he had never seen such complete destruction. Captain Parker's voice came through the chaos with impossible clarity. While Scarth jammers blocked all other communications, somehow the human signal reached every surviving Coalition ship perfectly. "All vessels, this is Terran Command. Stand by for Tactical Coordination Protocol Alpha 7. Do exactly as instructed, when instructed." Commander Thale, her crystal body dim and cracked from battle damage, stared at her communication board in amazement. "How are they getting through the jamming?" Her question went unanswered as data streams began flooding Coalition computers. Complex tactical information appeared on screens throughout the fleet, uploaded from an unknown source. The data was incredibly detailed, showing Scarth ship positions, weapon patterns, and structural weak points that no Coalition sensor had detected. Lieutenant Walsh worked frantically at her station aboard the Determination. Her screens showed information that would have seemed impossible to the alien commanders. "Captain, analysis complete. The Scarth adaptive armor has a fatal flaw." "Explain," Parker said calmly, as if they weren't surrounded by 300 enemy ships. "Their armor is too smart for its own good. It changes structure to counter whatever hits it, but it can only adapt to one frequency at a time. If we hit the same spot with 3 different energy types in rapid sequence, the armor gets confused and fails completely." Parker nodded. This was exactly what he had hoped to find. While the Coalition had been building bigger and more powerful weapons, humans had focused on understanding how things worked. They had learned that the deadliest weapon wasn't the strongest one, but the smartest one. The 12 human ships began to move. To alien eyes, the Luna-class vessels still looked primitive and unremarkable. But appearances had always been deceiving. Hidden beneath their plain gray hulls were weapon systems unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of focusing on raw power, human weapons were designed for adaptability. Each gun could change its energy frequency, firing pattern, and targeting mode in milliseconds. What looked like simple laser cannons could become plasma projectors, particle beams, or electromagnetic pulse generators depending on what the target required. Coalition survivors, adjust your weapon frequencies to match transmitted parameters, Parker ordered. Target the coordinates we're uploading to your systems. Fire on my mark. The Determination and her sister ships moved with mechanical precision through the chaos. They didn't race toward the enemy like charging knights. Instead, they positioned themselves with mathematical accuracy, each ship covering specific angles and distances. Walsh's analysis had revealed something the Scarf didn't know about themselves. Their perfect ambush formation had a weakness. By surrounding the coalition fleet so completely, they had trapped themselves in a pattern that could be exploited. All ships, mark your targets, Parker announced. His voice carried absolute confidence that somehow spread to the demoralized coalition survivors. Fire in sequence. Zephyrian vessels, plasma burst on my count of 3. Crystalline ships, shield disruptors on my count of 2. Human vessels, adaptive frequency sweep on my count of 1. Admiral Vextar, his ship barely holding together, followed the human instructions without question. For the first time in his military career, he was taking orders from a species he had considered inferior. But desperation made him willing to try anything. 3. Zephyrian plasma cannons fired in perfect unison, their green energy beams striking Scarf armor that immediately adapted to absorb the attack. 2. Crystalline disruptor beams followed instantly, hitting the same spots with completely different energy patterns. The Scarf armor tried to reconfigure again, its adaptive systems working frantically. 1. Human weapons fired their adaptive frequency sweeps, cycling through dozens of different energy types in milliseconds. The confused Scarf armor couldn't keep up with the rapid changes and failed catastrophically. Scarf ships that had seemed invulnerable moments before began exploding in chain reactions. Their own adaptive technology became their weakness as the armor systems overloaded trying to counter attacks they couldn't understand. But the humans weren't finished. Parker's ships began executing maneuvers that seemed impossible for vessels their size. They darted between enemy formations like hunting wolves, their weapons striking with surgical precision at weak points Walsh's analysis had identified. The Luna-class ships revealed another secret. Their plane exteriors had advanced maneuvering systems that could change direction instantly. While alien ships needed time to turn their massive hulls, human vessels could pivot and dodge like fighters despite being the size of cruisers. How are they moving like that? Commander Thale gasped as she watched a human ship slip through a gap that should have been too small for it. The answer lay in human engineering philosophy. While other species built ships to look impressive or demonstrate power, humans built them to work. Every system was designed for efficiency and adaptability rather than show. Scarf commanders, who had spent months planning their perfect ambush, watched in growing panic as their trap became a slaughter. Ships that had been hunting coalition vessels suddenly found themselves being hunted by enemies they couldn't understand. The human weapons didn't just fire randomly. Each shot was calculated by advanced computers that analyzed thousands of variables simultaneously. They targeted support beams, power conduits, and weapon systems with precision that turned the Scarf formation into a collapsing house of cards. In 18 minutes, the battle was over. 300 Scarf vessels lay destroyed or disabled, their adaptive armor defeated by tactics they had never imagined possible. The 12 human ships remained largely undamaged, their plain hulls unmarked by enemy fire. The quiet species had finally spoken, and their voice was the sound of victory. Silence fell across the Kepler Nebula like a heavy blanket. Where moments before the space had been filled with weapons fire and explosions, now there was only the gentle drift of debris. 300 Scarf warships floated dead in the darkness, their once mighty hulls torn apart by forces they had never understood. The surviving coalition vessels hung motionless in space, their crews staring through viewports at the impossible scene around them. Admiral Vextar's flagship drifted with half its systems offline, but the Zephyrian commander was alive when he should have been dead. Commander Thale's crystalline ship flickered weakly, but her people were safe when they should have been vapor. And in the middle of it all, 12 plain gray human ships moved slowly through the wreckage, their simple forms untouched by battle damage. Admiral Vextar's voice cracked as he opened a communication channel to Captain Parker. The proud warrior who had boasted about plasma cannons and superior firepower now sounded like a confused child. Captain Parker, how? Your ships looked so ordinary. Your weapons seemed so weak compared to ours. How did you do this? Parker's response came through clearly, his voice carrying the same calm tone he had used throughout the battle. "Admiral, we learned something long ago that perhaps other species forgot. The most powerful weapon is not always the one that hits the hardest. Sometimes it is the one that hits exactly where it needs to, exactly when it needs to." Lieutenant Walsh began transmitting detailed after-action reports to the surviving coalition ships. The data streams revealed the incredible depth of human preparation. Every weapon signature recorded during the summit months ago. Every tactical formation analyzed from joint training exercises. Every communication protocol memoized and understood. "We have been studying everyone," Parker continued. "Not just our enemies, but our friends as well. We needed to understand how you think, how you fight, how you make decisions. Only by knowing our allies could we know how to help them when the time came." Commander Thale's crystal body pulsed with dim light as she struggled to understand. "You were watching us. Learning from us. But why? Did you know this would happen?" "We did not know," Parker admitted. "But we prepared for the possibility. Humans learned long ago that the galaxy is full of dangers. Some threats come from enemies who attack openly. Others come from friends who might not always remain friendly. Wisdom means being ready for both." The human captain's words sent ripples of unease through the coalition survivors. They began to realize just how thoroughly they had been studied. Every strength catalogued. Every weakness identified. Every tactical preference mapped and recorded. Captain Parker continued his explanation with the patience of a teacher. "During the summit, we watched Admiral Vextar demonstrate his plasma cannons. We measured their energy output, firing rate, and targeting systems. When Commander Thale showed her shield harmonics, we recorded the frequencies and power requirements. Every species revealed their capabilities while we sat quietly and learned." Admiral Vextar's scales had turned pale green, a sign of deep shock among his people. "You have been preparing to fight us." "We have been preparing to fight alongside you," Parker corrected gently. "But also to fight against you, if circumstances required it. The Scarf studied your tactics from public records and intelligence gathering. We studied them by working with you directly. We know your strengths because you shared them with us. We know your weaknesses because we observed them during training." The implications struck the coalition commanders like physical blows. The humans had not just been passive observers. They had been conducting the most thorough intelligence operation in galactic history, hiding it behind a mask of helpful cooperation and peaceful intentions. Walsh uploaded more data to the coalition ships, showing the extent of human analysis. Battle formations broken down into mathematical models. Communication patterns translated and understood. Weapons systems reverse-engineered from sensor readings taken during friendly demonstrations. "The Scarf made one critical mistake," Parker explained. "They assumed that studying public records and intercepted communications would tell them everything about coalition capabilities. But they never worked directly with you. They never saw how you actually behave under pressure, how your commanders really think, how your crews respond to unexpected situations." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We did. For 5 years, we have been your allies. We have flown beside you, trained with you, shared meals with your crews. We know you better than you know yourselves." The human ships began forming up for departure, their mission complete. But before leaving, Parker had one final message for his stunned allies. 3 days from now, there will be emergency sessions in the Coalition Council chambers. You will ask for human tactical advisors to be assigned to your fleets. You will request our help in developing new defensive strategies. You will want to learn how we think, how we plan, how we prepare for the unexpected. Admiral Vextar found his voice again. "And will you help us?" "Of course," Parker replied without hesitation. "We will share our knowledge freely with friends and allies. But understand this, we will continue to watch and learn. Every cooperation teaches us something new. Every conflict shows us possibilities we had not considered. The galaxy is our classroom, and humanity is always studying." Commander Thale's crystalline features flickered with what might have been respect. "You planned all of this from the beginning." "We planned for everything," Parker corrected her. "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Be ready to save your friends, but also be ready to stop them if they become your enemies. The quiet observers see everything, remember everything, and prepare for anything." The 12 human ships began moving away from the battle site, their simple forms disappearing into the darkness between stars. They left behind a coalition fleet forever changed by what they had witnessed. The galaxy had learned a new lesson about the species they had dismissed as weak and primitive. The quiet humans were always watching, always learning, and always ready to act when the time came. The observers had become the observed, and nothing would ever be the same again.